Welcome heroes and villains to Fjooken Enterprises YouTube channel. I am continuing my quest to interview all the game masters I know. This time I'm going to an old friend who I've been friends with for at least over a decade with. As always, I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I don't know how much of the names or what name to use to introduce them. So,
All right. My name's Paul. We'll just go with that. But Pajuk and I have been friends for at least 15 years, if not more. I mean, that's when we met was playing on Neverwinter Nights, a Mia server. That was back in the day.
so how did you get into role playing games?
Well, it started with video games, stuff like that. Some of the old Baldur's Gate games, just little things like that. Probably before that, before I had any sort of computer gaming experience, there was the old board game Hero Quest, and then I found myself actually making up little rules and stuff like that for war games with my old little Legos. I would roll dice and add little things here and there to see how this Lego with a sword beat if this guy with an axe or something like that. So I was just kind of drawn to it. The Hero Quest board game helped. Magic the Gathering helped. When it came to computer games, that was the next step. And then as Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition and Third Edition came out, I started to get into those, pick up some of those old books from used book sales and things like that, and then started reading the books and finding different groups around my area and decided to get in on that.
How'd you go from being a player to being a game master?
It was with the RPGA. Back in the day, Wizards of the Coast had a specific group of folks, the RPGA. I think it's now defunct, but they've got like a new iteration of it. And the RPGA needed dungeon masters and things like that. I'm a member of a local group based out of Gainesville, Florida. And we would get together maybe about once or twice a month and play 2 or 3 different adventures. The way that the RPGA worked is if you had run the module before as a player, if you played through it, you could then run it for other people only if you were an RPGA certified dungeon master. So they created this online test and everything like that. Everything was open book, of course, because you're never stuck at their table with your players sitting around you without a book. You had to pass this little test, and you either played through the module and then you could run it, or if you needed to, which we often needed to, you would have somebody who really liked to DM, and they would eat the mod by running it as a DM without ever having played it, which means that none of their characters that were registered with the RPGA could actually go through the adventure after they ran it. Only because of the fact that they then knew all of the encounters and everything like that. It gave them an unfair advantage. Got into DMing by becoming an RPGA certified DM. And then I actually wrote my first module for the Living Greyhawk series. It was an introductory module. They had modules based on level cap and things like that. My first module for the RPGA, and the only one that I ever actually published, was just an intro module, and it was playable in Florida and Puerto Rico only. The RPGA's Living Greyhawk system assigned particular regions to real life areas of the world. So Florida and Puerto Rico was what was known as the Principality of Ulick. And so if you wanted to play any modules that were set in the Principality of Ulick, you had to be in Florida or Puerto Rico specifically at a convention or a game day or something like that. It made it really difficult to get some of the weirder regions, because then you were talking about like flying to Greece or the UK, or flying to California or someplace like that.
What systems have you played and ran?
Played and ran. Played a lot. 3.5, 3.0, 3.5, 4th edition, Pathfinder edition, Legend of the Five Rings, a couple of the Warhammer 40K different games, Death Guard and Traitor. And then just a few, I have a few other books. I've never played those, but I've been interested in them. As far as running, mostly run is 3.5, Pathfinder, and 5th edition. I presently have a 3.5 and a 5th edition game running.
What systems do you enjoy running?
My favorite system to run is probably 3.5. I'm the most familiar with the rules because I've been playing it for so long. I took my Dungeon Master test back in the day. I mean, that was 2004. So, I was, it's 2021 now. So, I mean, that was 17 years ago. I've been playing 3.5 for 17 years. 5th edition, I've been doing that for several years. I'm familiar with the ins and outs of the game system. I can run it well, but I prefer 3.5. That's my favorite just because of the vast amount of character customization options that were out there. And, that of course leads to some complexity, which can drive some players away from playing D&D. If it's too complicated, there's too many rules, there's too many options, that can overwhelm a lot of people. So, but I don't have a problem with that. I enjoy that customization option. So that's my favorite.
Are there any of the systems you played, run, or looked at that you won't run?
Probably Rogue. Yeah, probably Rogue Trader would be one that I don't enjoy running. I really wouldn't, enjoy it as much. So if somebody was saying like, hey, look, we've got a Rogue Trader game and it's going to be you or somebody else that's going to be the game master for it, I would say make sure it's the other person and I will play. I'm more than happy to play it, but I just don't want to run it.
Do you have any fond memories of the characters surprising you that you would like to discuss today?
There's a couple of times when characters have surprised me. One time was actually when I was running my own intro module. So it was at the premiere, and it was in a convention in Orlando. I think it was called Oasis. And I sat down, and it was like one of the second groups beyond the playtesters to actually sit down and play this game. And the entire module took place in the city. You never had to leave the city whatsoever for any reason. In fact, aside from, you could feasibly go into the main tavern where this whole adventure was originally set, and you could feasibly solve the entire adventure without ever leaving the tavern, because it was just such a small, contained little module that it worked that you could do that. Of course, you could, have one or two little encounters outside of that, but it was all within the city. And this second group sat down and they came in and they were like, okay, we're raring to play this. This is great. We've got the guy who wrote the module running the game. And they started immediately leaving the city. And I was like, whoa, where are you getting all this? So, I had to kind of lead them a little bit by the nose to get them back in. The cut and thrust of the module was that a popular bard and entertainer had gone missing, and there were a couple of suspects, and their immediate response was, okay, this person's gone missing. Let's go. It's a moderately sized city, so we can rent hunting dogs. Let's rent hunting dogs and take the hunting dogs outside of the city and try to track the scent. And we'll find where this guy was taken, and then we'll find the bad guys, and we'll rip through this module. And I said, I was like, well, your hunting dogs, take you right back into the city, right back to the inn, because that's where the guy, he had been hidden in a secret chamber in the inn. And that was where he was. So there was that one. That was probably the funniest one. That's probably the one that sticks with me the most. There was another one that actually happened kind of recently in one of my games. In one of my 3.5 games, I've created a little tiered system of bad guys where there's the top bad guy, and then his top lieutenant, and then there's a bevy of different little sub lieutenants, and then of course under them they have some little basic bad guys that, they throw at the adventurers. So the idea is I want the adventurers to see that there's this big conspiracy going on. And the notes that the adventurers have been finding have just been signed with an initial. Well, of course, there's only 26 letters in the English alphabet. So I used the same letter on one of the notes for one of the guys that's lower down as I did on like the top lieutenant, and they immediately latched onto this like top lieutenant. Oh, obviously this guy, this bad guy is this top lieutenant, and we got to go after him. And I was like, whoa, like you're solving the mystery too fast. I gotta put the brakes on this. So they got it too quickly, and I was like, okay, maybe I should have just used a different letter.
Are there any tales of everything going perfectly that you would like to discuss today?
My 3.5 group on Friday, they were sent to this tower that belongs to a mage that reappears in various parts of the country. And no one can predict where it's going to appear next. They were sent there to rescue a knight and his companions that had gone there to ask the wizard to serve the kingdom in an upcoming war. They get in, and I had the first encounter was, and this is a group of level 4 characters. So it's a really tough encounter, but I do give ways around the encounters. So they had 4 gargoyles on pillars, and the gargoyles threatened that if the players didn't answer the riddles, they would eat them. And so each gargoyle asks a riddle, and the players had to answer the riddles correctly. And if they answer the riddle correctly, the gargoyle would turn to stone, the pillar would sink, and then part of the stairway out of this first level would appear. And I anticipated that they would have to fight at least one of the gargoyles. But the players managed to get all 4 riddles, and these were not easy riddles. This was I had to go into some obscure poetry and things like that to try to come up with these things. But they managed to get all 4. Took them about a half an hour of debating, but they managed to get all 4. And then they wound up go up the stairs to the second room. There was a set of statues of various heroes and things like that. And they had to find various weapons and like holy symbols and stuff like that, and give it to the correct statue in order to avoid setting off a lightning trap. Minor lightning trap. It wouldn't have killed him, but it would have hurt. And they managed to immediately identify the problem. I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys are pretty quick. They managed to immediately okay, we got to get the right things into the hands of the right statue. Went out, grabbed, they found the little stash. They defeated the orcs with class levels that were there, and then brought the stuff back. Put it in first try, got everything done, and then I thought, okay, well, I had put, just in case they wanted to explore, I put a pit trap just off to the side. Just okay, here we go. And just as they're about to ascend to the 3rd floor, because the statues opened up the next floor's staircase, I said, all right, well, you know what? I'll forget this pit trap. It just didn't attract them. They didn't go in that direction. And they just decide, you know what? I just want to go in this direction just to see what else is on this floor. So they go in, and the minute they get into this room that is nothing but a pit trap, boom, the pit trap opens, and the guy makes his reflex save and manages to avoid the damage. I was like, okay, well, there you go. Then they get to the top room. They rush into battle with the necromancer and his, I had a couple of mummy servants waiting in the wings that they hadn't discovered yet. The barbarian rushes forward. The mummies flank him. And so he's in a world of trouble. And then the cleric, raises the holy symbol, turns undead, manages to get the mummies to scatter a little bit. And they just wound up mopping the floor with this guy. He was just not as much of a challenge as it should have been. And I run these challenges when I build them up. I run them through a couple of different play tests, and I was like, okay, this should be a really difficult final boss challenge, and they worked together really well. They managed to do everything that they should have done when they should have done it, and they knew from the get-go how they were going to process through this. So they crunched through that whole thing in just a couple of hours, and I was really proud of them. I was like, wow, you guys did a great job on this.
Do you have any common house rules you use?
So in 5th edition, rogues can only get like sneak attack when they're using like a light weapon, for example. I rule that if you are playing a rogue monk combination, because you can dual class in 5th edition, and of course the monk gets their nice meaty fist, which goes up as you level up in monk, that a monk's empty hand will count as light for the purposes of doing sneak attack. That's not officially in the rules, and I think what they wanted to do was keep some game balance tweaks in there to say that, but it just doesn't make sense that somebody holding a dagger can do sneak attack damage, but somebody with their empty fist, that's not a light weapon. So I just never quite liked that. In 3.5, if the players do more than half of from the very get-go, if they do more than half of the damage to a bad guy in one hit, I will have the bad guy roll a fortitude save to see if they survive. Basically, just because of the fact that if they're doing such massive damage, the body should go into shock. And if that's the case and they go into shock, then the guy is gone, if he fails his fortitude saves. If he makes it, hey, he can still fight. But, at least enemies, I give them the benefit of the doubt. But usually when that rule is in place, I'm also looking at maximizing hit points on bad guys. So it makes them a little difficult, makes it a little more difficult, but I give them the little cookie of possibly taking out a bad guy in one shot.
As the penultimate question, do you have any advice for your fellow game masters out there?
Always anticipate that your players are going to break your modules. They are going to break your adventurers. So your best bet is actually to not do too much concrete planning. If you do too much concrete planning and they go off script, you're going to be left with a story over here, and that's where you've planned, and that's where you've spent all your time, your effort trying to construct these encounters, and your players are going to be up over here. So I think the best thing to do, and this is what I do with my games, is I try to plan it out 1 week at a time, and I try to do branching storylines. So in both the 3.5 and the 5th edition game that I'm running currently, I come up with 2 or 3 different options that the players can choose from every week. They can go here, they can go there. And I try to let them choose, but I lead them that way. So it gives them kind of an illusion of choice. The choice is truly theirs, but it gives them the ability to choose how they're going to go about solving the mysteries, the story that I have laid out for them, and how they're going to participate in it. But at the same time, I have the ability to prepare for a couple of different outcomes. Even still, you're going to have broken adventures. In this the game that I ran just last night, my 5th edition game, I run Saturday evenings. I had come up with 2 different destinations and 2 different motivations for the players to go to these places. And I thought, okay, if they choose motivation A, they're definitely going to go over here. If they choose motivation B, they're definitely going to go over here. What they wound up choosing was motivation A and destination B. So I had to really quick kind of combine things and reconfigure things, but ultimately it worked out because I had planned on these 2 things, and the players were like really, really happy to, this was their story, this was where they wanted to go, this is what they wanted to do. So it gave them that choice, it gave them that option. And then, what I had really ultimately in terms of the story, what I had done was I really wanted them to choose A. all along I wanted them to choose A because that was the route I wanted them to go. But what I did was I said, okay, well, if they go to B, I'm going to write for them some encounters, some different story pieces. I'm going to put in some little tidbits of information that will lead them back in terms of evidence to solve this mystery that I have going on. It's going to lead them back to track A that I wanted them on in the first place. It'll just take them a few days of adventuring longer, and by that time they'll have a little bit more experience because they'll have wasted a few monsters in the process.
So, that's the final question. Is there anything that you're a part of online or anything that you care about that you would like to shout out?
I would honestly just, kind of give a little shout out to Roll20. Roll20.net has been the big ability to do this. My 3.5 edition game. I live in Connecticut. Two of my players live in Connecticut. The other two players live in Maine. We started as just a group of friends and we were just talking about it and we were just trying to figure out how we were going to do it. Roll20 is super easy to learn. It is super helpful. It has a lot of great support features and there's a lot of great marketplace creators out there that create content from landscapes to little minifigs for your games and everything. So it really does help. And it especially in times like these, when we're still dealing with coronavirus and people can't really gather and some people are really squidgy about, even small group gatherings. This is a great thing. You can sit in your living room with your laptop open or, you're in your office with your desktop and you can roll the die right on Roll20 and it makes scheduling and everything so much easier. So I would highly like to give the kudos to them and encourage game masters and players who are thinking of how to figure this whole thing out and kind of get a more regular game going. Roll20 is the way to go.
Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to do all the YouTube things, comment, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you in the next one, and I hope to have Paul back on here for other topics.